Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, good. There's Miriam, and we have Stephanie and Lucinda with us too. So we'll just wait for everyone to get on camera.
Okay.
I'm so glad you got the link. There's Stephanie.
And hi, Steph.
All good. Hi, Miriam. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And there's Lucinda. Wonderful.
Hey, Rachel.
Welcome to everyone. On behalf of Paraclete Press, welcome to this virtual launch of She Made Me Laugh, Mother Teresa and the Call to Holiness by Stephanie Emmons. My name is Rachel McKendry, and I'm the publicist here at Paraclete. We're so honored to have Stephanie here today, along with her friend, Miriam Browning. Miriam was Stephanie's faithful companion on the journey to India, so you'll read all about her in the book. And we're also privileged to have Lucinda Vardy here with us today. She's the author of the book, A Simple Path. And in a way, Lucinda was also with you, Stephanie, during that time, but I'll let you tell about that later. Thank you to all three of you for sharing your amazing experiences with Mother Teresa, with the world through these books. And again, welcome. I'd like to invite everyone listening in now to take a moment to find the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to submit any questions or thoughts you might have for Stephanie and Miriam and Lucinda, and we'll hope to get to everyone before the end of the hour. We'll save the last 10 or 15 minutes for questions. Congratulations again, Stephanie, on this beautiful, beautiful book.
Thank you.
I wondered if you could first tell us how you came to know Lucinda and her work.
Thanks. Well, a long time ago, I think it was my friend Margie came across a book called Blessed. It's a fiction that was written by Lucinda, and it really touched me. And later I came across another book that she wrote, A Simple Path. And I think at one point, well, Miriam has it as well. I'm not sure if we both brought it with us, but we brought at least one copy with us on the trip. And we had to take a trip, a 48-hour trip from the south of India to, excuse me, to Calcutta. And it was, as we were getting closer and closer, we were getting more and more kind of nervous of what are we going to find there. So we passed the time reading the book to each other. And a lot of it is words of Mother Teresa that Lucinda had compiled into this book. And also a lot of recounting a lot of experiences of other volunteers and some of the sisters and that. So we kind of got a little bit of a taste of what it might be like as much as possible. And so it just, there was a few parts in there that really, it just gave us a bit of a window to what was ahead of us, even though that was hardly possible because what was ahead of us was so different. But so it just became a real touchstone. We read it a lot, and we read it kind of after being in Calcutta. We had to ride all the way back 48 hours on the train to where we were staying in the south. And we kind of reread and revisited some of the parts and kind of saw them differently, of course. And so, and I quote it in the book a couple times, I think, from this book. And yeah, so it's been really special. So I'm really excited to finally meet you, Lucinda, and have you here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Lucinda, thank you again for joining us. And we're going to take some time with Lucinda now to learn about the spirituality of Mother Teresa.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a privilege to be here and share, Mother. I would like to take this opportunity to talk about a different aspect of Mother Teresa, one that reveals more about her spirituality within her service to the poorest of the poor in the world. For me, it is important because it helps understand more fully how the communion of saints can be lived, prayed with, and be directed by. For Mother Teresa, the first evidence of this grace of communion in relationship to her vocation and her call by Jesus was the choice of her name. She said quite emphatically that she chose the name Teresa not after the big one, Saint Teresa of Avila, but the little one, Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. That is all she ever said publicly, but it holds many clues to her spirituality. So I want to share these. For me, they fall under three categories. One, silence as wisdom of being. humility as a manner of being, and love as foundation of being. So first then, silence as wisdom of being. Mother Teresa talked about God as a friend of silence, and through listening, we can hear what God is saying to us. She said that prayer is the fruit of silence, that silence aids a clean heart, which helps to see the love of God in others. Silence is the language of truth. Saint Therese said, "I've never sought anything but the truth. I never pretend." Saint Therese also said that silence does much good to the soul, what failures and charity it prevents, and so many other troubles of all kinds. She said that we fail the most in our lack of silence. I'd like to introduce silence then as a sacrificial act of being as it relates to the knowledge of truth. The one example that comes to mind is Jesus's silence in answer to Pilate's question, "What is truth?" in Matthew's Gospel. Truth cannot be logically explained nor verbally shared. When I met Mother Teresa and spent time with her, I've never been in the presence of a person so in touch with the truth in any situation, who could boldly and honestly express that truth with others. However, there was another kind of truth that Mother Teresa didn't express, the decades of spiritual dryness and darkness, which we found out about after her death, which indicates her sanctity from the practice of kenosis, the self-emptying. Her cross was extremely hard to bear. Without spiritual consolation, she smiled and encouraged her community around the world to continue to love Jesus with all of themselves and serve him in the poor. She served the poor with physical labor and spoke about the joy of loving and the joy of giving. It is hard to contemplate that level of sacrifice for over 40 years. Another thing that Mother Teresa shared with Saint Therese is that no one in her community knew of her spiritual suffering and extreme sacrifices. As at the Carmel at Lisieux, no sister knew which was the one that Saint Therese disliked the most, as she wrote in her autobiography, because she sacrificed each day to make that sister feel like her favorite and to spend more time with her than the ones she truthfully liked. The second part of Mother Teresa's spirituality is humility as manner of being. If you do not hide anything from God, you allow God to take what he wants from you, wrote Mother Teresa. And so she would teach that acceptance with a joyful surrender to everything as given was how to live one's life directed by God. The simplicity of a child is what attracted Mother Teresa to Saint Therese's spirituality, explained by Therese as a disposition of heart, which makes us humble and little in the arms of God. The life of a missionary of charity is imbued with that sort of simplicity of a child, as well as the loving response of a mother. The humility of Mother Teresa is evident in the prayers chosen for the missionaries of charity prayer books. I found the traditional litany to humility in their prayer book, which begins, "Deliver me, O Jesus, from the desire of being loved, from the desire of being extolled, from the desire of being honored, from the desire of being praised, from the desire of being preferred, from the desire of being consulted, from the desire of being approved." The third and final part of Mother Teresa's spirituality is love as foundation of being. Saint Therese realized her vocation in the Carmel as one of love. After this was given to her, she then documented how what she called the little way could express this love. Her motto was to do everyday little things with great love. She wrote that love is nourished only by sacrifices. Mother Teresa would quote this everyday little things with great love all the time. It is in fact foundational to the everyday service of each missionary of charity. Even though St. Teresa's love as a contemplative in a cloister was what she accepted as God's will for her, she wrote of having a calling to be a missionary in Asia. She would imagine going there to evangelize, to preach, and to serve. Yet due to her poor health, she knew that this was not possible, especially when experiencing the early symptoms of tuberculosis. I feel this is the real reason Mother Teresa took St. Teresa's name when she left the Loreto convent as a teacher in Calcutta to begin working in the slums with the poor and later forming the Missionaries of Charity. Was she claiming something special in relationship with Therese? Was she saying to her, look, I will do what you desire to do and couldn't do. I'll carry on your desire to love. I will offer your love in action. Was Mother Teresa reversing the Martha and Mary story? Was she saying, you've done the better part in your contemplation. Now let me do the action? Was Mother Teresa responding to what St. Therese had said on her deathbed at the age of 24? Charity must not consist in feelings, but in works. Perhaps we can find the answer between Therese's creative imagination and Mother Teresa's pragmatism in the choice of metaphor to describe their paths. St. Therese wrote of being a little flower under the gaze of God. Mother Teresa said she was a little pencil in God's hand. St. Teresa's flower was so that the master of the garden could pluck it for his pleasure. Mother Teresa's pencil wrote the words of Jesus' love in active service to the poor. I'd like to end with a prayer by St. John Henry Cardinal Newman, which was one of Mother Teresa's favorites. Dear Jesus, help us to spread your fragrance everywhere we go. Flood our souls with your spirit and life. Penetrate and possess our whole being so utterly that our lives may only be a radiance of yours. Shine through us and be so in us that every soul we come in contact with may feel your presence in our soul. Let them look up and see no longer us, but only Jesus. Stay with us, and then we shall begin to shine as you shine. So to shine is to be a light to others. The light of Jesus will be all from you. None of it will be ours. It will be you shining on others through us. Let us thus praise you in the way you love best, by shining on those around us. Let us preach you without preaching, not by words, but by our example, by the catching force, the sympathetic influence of what we do, the evident fullness of the love our hearts bear to you. Amen.
Thank you so much, Lucinda. I wondered, Stephanie, I'm not sure what you'd like to do next, if there's a portion of the book you'd like to read for us, or if you and Miriam would like to tell some of your stories.
I think stories always, yeah, let's start with some stories. And maybe
Wonderful.
with the pictures, some of the pictures might
Absolutely.
stir some of those stories too. Okay, this is Uncle Frank. And he, you'll read about him. He has his own chapter in the book, but he welcomed us when there were very few places available to keep us or to take us and take us in Calcutta, and he took care of us. and I think he was 90 years old. And he had his 91st birthday when we were there. And it's kind of a long story short. We got him a cake, and Miriam got the numbers 1 and 9 for 91, but at the last minute she switched them to 19 and said, you're too young to be 91. Today you're 19. And he burst into tears, and it was just a really neat moment. And so I just sort of talk about that a little bit in the book. And he just kind of is, through the pages of the book, he shows up, because that's kind of how he was in our trip. He just showed up at the right minute when we, for some reason, did not make any reservations in Calcutta. We showed up at the other side of the world with no reservations. Like, that's the craziness of being in your 20s. And like, Miriam was always like, oh, we'll figure it out, and I thought, okay, we'll figure it out, but we didn't. And we were kind of turned away at a lot of places, and then it was late at night. And do you want to share about that, Miriam? Or
Sure. I just remember looking up places of where we would stay, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll stay at the YMCA, no problem, and that's where I've read about people staying, and so that's where we'll go. So we got off the train and we hopped in a taxi, and they took us there, and we came, we're like, we're here, we're ready to stay. And they were like, oh, we're closed. And we're like, what? They're like, it's our off season. We're like, what? It's now dusk, and we aren't going to walk around the street of Calcutta finding a hotel. Like, you got to help us, So they did. In the end, they found somebody who brought us over to the place that we stayed. And the Lord was with us throughout our whole trip, because I remember very clearly following this guy, weaving in and out of the streets, clueless, and just putting our trust in him. But I remember when Steph and I finally got into our room, I said, did you notice something about that guy? And she was like, yeah, I felt like I was following Jesus. I'm like, me too. As soon as we arrived at the door, we turned around to say thank you, and the guy was gone, So it was just this moment of like, wow, like we were just really cared for along every step of the way, So there was lots of prayer and protection surrounding us while we were gone. So yeah, that's one of the things. Yeah, oh my. Yeah, there we were. Yeah, I remember all those backpacks, thinking we needed all that stuff.
yeah. Right.
Tell us how old you were when you made this journey together.
Well, I turned 20, and 2 weeks later I was on an airplane and flying off to India with Stephanie.
I was 27. So I felt like the older, wiser one, like I was going to keep her in check. And when, before we left, I took her brother aside, who was Father Thomas Dowd, who's now Bishop Thomas Dowd of Montreal. And I took him aside and said, don't worry, I'll keep an eye on her. I'll keep her under my wing. And he just, for some reason, he didn't even really know me, but he said, I have a feeling she'll be looking after you. And I had no idea what he meant. And I was like, huh, okay. So it's, yeah. And he was right. He was right in so many ways. And see if you can spot the Canadian there in that picture. That's me. So.
Yeah. Well, we really took care of each other.
Yeah.
There were so many, just the security of another person and wisdom, guidance, everything, and not being all alone was so key for me.
Yeah. This is a rickshaw that we took. That was kind of the main way we got around, other than taxis, which was a little too terrifying because they just went too fast for us. But quite a lot of the people there make their living pulling these rickshaws, and often with bare feet for their whole life. You might see somebody 60 years old pulling a rickshaw, and they do it for pennies, So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the train. one of the many incredible sights we saw in 48 hours along the way. There's
Yeah.
the train that's leaning out the door. Oh, there's a guy climbing a coconut tree outside of our window. That happened every day. And that is a view from the rooftop of where we were staying. I like to go up there in the evening and just sort of sit quietly and unwind and process things a little bit. And yeah, I love that one. And there's Miriam giving me one of her many reassuring looks. We were at a big, huge function, and I really wasn't feeling well, and I really wanted to go back, but we had taken like 3 buses and a cab and walked around the whole thing to get there, so I had no idea how to get back, and everybody was sort of focused on what was happening, and nobody wanted to take me back. And Miriam was there, and I just saw her like, just that look, you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And then I was okay. That right after that, I wasn't sick anymore. It was just one of those weird moments. It was like, okay, I'm good. Yeah. She was really the person of Christ for me in a lot of ways, just that steady presence there. And she was pretty funny too. So part of the book being called She Made Me Laugh, it's definitely about Mother Teresa, but it's also equally about Miriam, as you'll learn in the book.
Yeah.
And the reason this one makes me laugh a lot is if you look at her hands, she has nothing. She's not sewing anything. We made her pose for that picture, excuse me, and only later when we developed the pictures, we thought, oh no, we can see that it's staged, and just for some reason it's fun. Yeah. And there she is. We're doing our laundry on a rock. It's a bit nutty. And fresh bananas every day came to our place. And there was the fire, the wood we built, the wood we used to build a fire to heat the water to wash our clothes on the roof. And there's me in my sari, which I didn't assemble, excuse me, I didn't assemble very well the first time. I guess I had it kind of messed up. It's very difficult. It's about 1,000,000 miles long, and Miriam did hers great somehow, and I went out and there was these ladies that all came up, and there was like no personal bubble. They just came up without even saying anything. They just like wound it all off of me. And there's underclothes, like there's that red top and there's a skirt, but still they took it all off and they're all talking and laughing and whatever. And then they redressed me and rewrapped it like immediately. And it was like, I was terrified, and Miriam was just busting a gut. So I knew it was okay. So after that, I needed her help to put it on. You want to take that one, Miriam?
Well, this is just a scene from along the train, right?
Yeah.
And when you were looking out the train, you just saw so many families and people just living along the tracks. It was kind of shocking. Like there was often lots of scenery, but the poverty through the window was so evident. And it was almost like they were waiting for the train to stop because that was their business, you know? When the train would stop, people would just all like hop on and walk through and try to sell you all kinds of things. And I mean, I remember in the middle of the night, both Steph and I remember them hopping on with big pots of tea and like chaya, and it would like wake you up and you'd be like, oh, you know, it's just startling. And I was on the top bunk, and the whole train rocked back and forth, and it was just like, I don't know, a ride. But yeah, so there's a lot. And our little booth, or I guess that's what you'd call it, where we sat, was just 2 seats, like, and we were like face to face, you know, knee to knee. And we're like, okay, this is the next 48 hours. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Lots of those sceneries. Oh my gosh, that elephant. I remember standing on the side of the road and we were like looking at buying something, and then there was like, you hear these chains, you know, and I turned around and I was like, there's an elephant, you know. And it was just this moment of like, okay, this is just everyday life around here. Like, it was another one of our culture shock surprises in our time we were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, maybe briefly or in your own words, maybe that story of when you first met Mother Teresa? Because I'm thinking again about your choice to talk about her sense of humor, Stephanie, which is something that not many people really know. We're so familiar with the dark night of the soul and her struggles, but really her humor, which is so wonderful. I'd love to hear you talk a little about that.
Sure. There were so many times that really, I mean, Miriam and I were laughing from the first moment we hit India, because everything that struck us as absurd, we were overtired, and it was kind of like comic relief, and we were just laughing at everything. But it also was really neat to see that Mother Teresa was playful, and she would chuckle at different things as well. And when we first got there, there's a whole chapter about this, but when we first we did kind of the same thing as once we got settled in the place where we stayed overnight. The first night, we figured out our way to get to the mother house in the morning of the Missionaries of Charity. And we just showed up at the door, and this is Miriam. I just picture her, we're here, you know, this kind of, here we are, we're ready to volunteer, as if, you know, we're the, you know, they've been waiting all their lives for us, you know, of course. We got to the door, and there's a wooden sign just outside the door. And I know a lot of people have talked about this iconic sign. It says Mother Teresa, and it's just this old sign. It said in, out, and it's like those little office signs where you slide whether you're in or out, and it said in. And we're like, she's in, you know. We had no idea. We didn't even know if she was in India. We just went there, and she was in. So we just knocked on the door or rang the bell. And someone answered the door, one of the sisters, and we said, hi, I just remember Miriam. Hi, we're here from Canada. We're here to volunteer. And they went, okay, like, I guess they're used to this happening all the time. They said, come on in. And why don't you go wait in the chapel, and Mother Teresa will be in shortly to see you. And it was like, wow. It was like, I didn't think we would get it like an audience or something so easily like that. So we just went in the chapel, and it was just, you know, I'd seen pictures from pictures of that big, huge chapel that so many people have seen. And so we were in there together, just the two of us. And it was like, you know, we traveled half the way around the world to be there, and all these years of my life wanting to go there. And now we're sitting there just on the cusp of this whole thing starting, of meeting her. And then at one point, we were the only ones there. At one point, a bell started ringing, and then we were just look at each other, and then all the missionaries of charity started coming in one by one, and like making rows and kneeling down. And we were just like, I just felt like we were like 7 years old in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the two of us are like, we better get out of here. So we got up, and then Mother Teresa appeared just inside the doorway, and she was like, no, just relax. You know, like, she didn't say that. She was like, and she called us, like, welcomed us to come over. So we went over, and she just sort of was like kneel down, whatever. She handed us a prayer book and a rosary, I think. And there was just something about, like, she kind of was, it was like she was a bit playful or nervous, or pretending she was nervous that that the sisters would scold her for talking to us. So she was like, you know, like that. It was just a moment, but it was like, okay, you sit down, we'll talk later, kind of thing. It was just this moment, but it was like, wow, I didn't know she was going to be like that. So there we are, just sort of praying the rosary, no big deal. And and at the end, everybody was quiet, and everybody sat down, and it was just quiet prayer. And then I was kind of lost in my thoughts. I guess my eyes were closed, and Miriam was like nudging me. Steph, Mother Teresa's calling us over. Come on. It's like, okay, those are not words you expect to hear. So So we went over, and she met us outside the chapel door, and she took our hands, and she was about like this tall, maybe. And she just was there, and she says, "Welcome, girls. Thank you so much for coming. I'm glad to see you, and I'm really glad you came and followed God's call to come all the way over here to do what Jesus would do," that kind of thing. I think she said stuff like that. And she held our hands and asked us where we were from, and we told her Ottawa, and she was like, "Oh, what a beautiful city. I've been there." And then she said, "You must join us later for adoration." And we said, "Yes, of course." So to come back for prayer time later. And she said, "Okay, in the meantime, why don't you go over and see my children, go spend time with my children." And she explained that meant her orphanage down the street. So we said, "Okay." And then she said, "Oh, will you be back for Mass in the morning?" And we were just like, "Yeah, we'll be back for Mass." This is what we came for, this whole deal. So we didn't say that, but yes, we said, "Yeah, we'll be back for Mass." And so then she said, "Okay, great, we'll see you later." And that was it. And away she went, and she was talking to other people, and we just stood there like, did that really happen? It was just a really amazing moment. And so we, of course, we went off and saw the children, and it all kind of unfolded from there. So yeah, did I capture everything, Miriam? Does that sound right?
Yes, totally. But I also remember her saying to us, "Well, I pray to see you in one of these someday," meaning her sorry. So it was like, oh my gosh. So I remember running off going, "I'm supposed to be a nun," was the first thought, Mother Teresa said so. But I then reflected and went like, wait a minute, Lord, if it's my vocation, maybe you could tell me too, so yeah.
Stephanie and Miriam, Gloria Burgess is asking, what year did this travel happen?
1996.
Yeah.
And Eleanor is asking, what's the biggest way your lives were changed after your time in India and being with Mother Teresa?
Do you want to go first, Miriam?
I'm open to that, but do you have something you want
Sure, whatever. I think, in all the ways that you would expect, it was changed in the sense that, of course, it was amazing to have met a saint, a living saint, and it was very touching, and it was very beautiful, and it was something that obviously you never forget. But I also came away with a real sense of vulnerability in the world, a real sense that I didn't feel safe. And I think that was because of just some of the things that happened to us. And yet, so fragility, I guess. I had that sense for the first time how fragile we can be. But I also, with that, had a real, along with that was a real strong knowing that I wasn't alone in that vulnerability, that we're all fragile, right? But that we don't have to go out in the world without any armor or clothes or whatever it is. Like we have that presence of Christ if we turn that way and take his hand. And literally, I had that through Miriam, and that was such a powerful thing all through those 40 days in India, to just be able to literally either hold her hand because we were going through some slums and it was scary, or link arms and laugh and like what were we doing? Skipping around and just being like, oh my gosh, we met Mother Teresa, and just silliness. But there was a real sense that I'm not alone. We are alone, but we're not. And it stayed with me this whole time.
That's beautiful. Well, I was 20, so there's so much about who I am that has changed. I was just a little girl, but I would say that my trip to India was sort of a major foundation for which to grow from. And in my experience of meeting Mother Teresa, like throughout the time we were there, like we saw her in different places, or at the chapel. So like nearing the end of the 2 weeks, I remember being like, oh yeah, there's Mother Teresa. And I kind of caught myself being like, how and when did that become normal? You know, like there she is, you know, no big deal, like just another day. And from that, what had struck me was just her way of living. Like her day was actually very simple. Like she would get up, have breakfast, sweep the floor, go to prayer, go into the homes, like wherever she was going that day, come home, eat. Like the building blocks of all that she did were actually very simple daily tasks. And it was because of what the Lord did with them that like she was able to reach so many people. And it was just that daily yes. And it was like when you step back from a huge cathedral, you see this beautiful building, but when you get nice and close, you just see the brick upon brick of just stone. And it's when it's put together that it becomes what it becomes. And so in my life, since meeting her, it was just like that real sense of like simplicity. And like we hear from Saint Therese, you know, that do all things with great love. So it was just a real living example of just do your small things with great love and you will build something beautiful for the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so my life has sort of grown from there. It's very easy. I've lost focus many times throughout the years of just how simple life can be, but how magnificent it can become just by giving it to God. So yeah, that's been a huge thing from meeting her to today in my life.
The word simplicity and simple thoughts like silence reminds me a little bit of some of what we were talking about yesterday in planning for this launch today. Lucinda, you were mentioning the pots and pans and the everyday and the accessibility, and it sounds like that's something that all three of you found in common with your experiences with Mother.
Yes, if I may just add something. I think one of the things that touched me about being with Mother was this extraordinary way of the feminine. You know, Stephanie talked about the vulnerability, the tenderness in a way. I think just in Pope Francis's new encyclical, he talks about this tenderness. You know, this is a time where we are being called. We're in a vulnerable time, and there's something about the maternal, about Mother, which was very pragmatic. I mean, she was really. I once gave a talk on her saying that she was one of the best CEOs I ever met because she had the whole organization. I mean, she had missionaries of charity all over the world. I mean, she had a simple everyday life, but my goodness, she knew what was going on all over the place and opening homes everywhere. And also the other thing that she really touched me by visiting her was the way that she united all the religions. You know, there they were. Most people who were dying in the orphanages were children from Hindus and Muslims, and they weren't Christians picking them up off the street. This was Jesus picking up joining us, uniting us into one God, And so that was something that really touched me. I had studied yoga. I was interested, obviously, in India as being the source of the great wisdom. You know, it's the oldest civilization in the world. So you're there, you're going to be affected. And so the leadership quality, the unity of the religions, being cared and loved for. If you don't believe the same thing, it doesn't matter. You're a human being in the eyes of God. And that's truthfulness that I talked about before. Mother's complete honesty about what she thought. She didn't care what people thought, what she thought, but she was very clear. She was very clear. And I think that's what I took away with me is get clear, you know. As Jesus said, say yes if it's yes, or no, it is no. But in between is not good.
Thank you. I love the story when you mentioned her as CEO, Stephanie, that the business card. Was there a story about her handing
Yes.
you her business card? That's wonderful.
When we were leaving, she gave each of us this card. It's a little worse for wear, but well, I guess you can't really see it, but it's in the book. Everything's in the book. There's a picture of it. And it's a prayer that Mother Teresa wrote. And she, I think at one point, a businessman asked if he could have them printed on cards, and she accepted. And then she had a whole whack of them. And she, when people were leaving the city, when we were saying goodbye, she would give them out and she would say, my card, you know, like, here's my calling card. And just little things like that that were just sort of silly, you know. And so just that, like, that dichotomy of, you know, just my card, here I am, as if I'm important and tongue in cheek. And meanwhile, it's this profound prayer. Shall I read it? I guess.
Yes, please.
Okay. It says, the fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. And the fruit of service is peace. So she handed us those and away we went, and we were crying, or at least I remember crying, thinking, I hope I get to come back here and see her. But of course she was in her 80s and she did die the following year. But yeah, and I just wanted to share one little funny thing I just thought of, where there's something I read somewhere that says there was an organization, a Catholic organization, trying to get something done, and they kept running into red tape. I forget the situation, but they asked her, someone asked her if she would intervene, if Mother Teresa would intervene. And of course it just, you know, came together immediately. And she turned to the people and said, sometimes it helps to be Mother Teresa, you know. So I just, you know, just that kind of knowing this playfulness with this icon that she had become. And that's the farthest thing from who she really was. But to be able to just play with that and sort of like, you know, yeah, just things like that. There was so many things. And as I researched when I was writing the book, which by the way, I started writing during the trip, which was 25 years ago. So it's a long gestation. And I just came across example after example of funny things she's said or done, or things that people have said. You know, I met Mother Teresa, and on Twitter, I post a lot about the book and about things unfolding about Mother Teresa, and people one after the other. I met Mother Teresa and she said this. I met Mother Teresa and she did that. And it's like, there's people all over the world with little pieces of this story. And so I'm kind of gathering some of those things and seeing if there's something else there. So
that's wonderful. Can you remember one of the funniest things that you remember her particularly saying while you were with her?
We were there. Let's see.
Miriam might remember too.
So, you want us? Okay. So I remember the last day when we were leaving. I thought it was the last day anyway. The memories are kind of murky. It was what Miriam mentioned was the, you know, we're saying goodbye, and she could see that we were tearful, and she's saying, you're going to be fine. You'll remember Mother, and just sort of chatting with us. And then just really playfully, I'm pretty sure it was playfully saying, now, as Miriam told already, I'm praying when I see you again, you're wearing one of these. And it was, for a moment, it was serious. And it was like this electric, oh my gosh, Mother Teresa is telling me my vocation. Wow. And then she kind of broke up a little bit. And I thought, okay, is it the joke? Is this divine providence? So it was just this moment of like, okay, she broke the ice because she knew we were sad to be leaving. And she just was in the moment of like, look, you know, it was just really, really funny and like sort of terrifying at the same time. But I think I said something like, oh, you never know, Mother, or it's just something stupid. And, you know, trying to come back with some answer, but anyway, so yeah, there's a few more in the book, but my memory is but that was a really big one. It's like Mother Teresa saying, I'm praying when I see you again. And what I wanted to say was, I bet you say that to all volunteers, like you're just recruiting, you know, but I was afraid she might not take that as humor, you know, so things like that. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to all three of you. I don't know if you have any final thoughts that any of you would like to share. This is such a special, such a personal book, and it's amazing to hear. I think it must be part of, again, that nitty gritty aspect of her spirituality that you talk about, where in a sense she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. We know now about the dark night, but to be able to connect on such a personal level with you as you were there, with you, Lucinda, as you were writing her words. Such an amazing woman. I can't imagine what it must be like for you to know this woman who's literally a saint. To have known her is such a gift. And thank you for sharing it again with all of us through your beautiful words.
My pleasure. I'm so thrilled to finally be able to share it. It's been in the back of my head and heart and filing cabinet for many, many years. And finally, it's like, it's been this surgery to extract it and to finally make it into something readable. It's just been slow, but I'm really grateful for all the support and so many people. I see the chat, all the stuff, and yeah, I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Well, we are as well. I'll just let you know if you, here are a couple more questions coming in perhaps. Aster is asking, Aster, I assume you're asking about Mother Teresa herself. Did she have any special friends that she confided in?
I can answer, but Lucinda, do you want to answer that, or?
Well, she had, as far as we know that she had a spiritual director. I mean, most, especially founders, most sisters, most religious sisters need to have spiritual direction. And so she did have a spiritual director, and I believe that he was the one who knew about her darkness, obviously. As far as special friendships, I don't know. I don't think she would have ever told us. I know that Stephanie, in the book, you found out that she kept in correspondence with her mother. That was always a tough one for her, that she couldn't go back to Albania. Didn't get permission to go back when her mother was not, when her mother was dying, in fact, I think. So Mother really is, you know, she got into our world through Malcolm Muggeridge doing a documentary on her on BBC. And she was just doing her thing before that. And then she just broke out doing Something Beautiful for God, it was called. And that was many years ago. I mean, that was what, 40, 50 years ago, perhaps 45. And so she was always surprised at how this happened from this documentary, and how her life, suddenly she became a celebrity, if you like. She became bigger than who she was. But she knew it wasn't her. She knew it was really Christ working through her. But I must admit that you know, she was greatly loved. She's still greatly loved by her sisters and the missionary charity fathers and brothers. She's greatly loved, and I think that the memory of someone greatly loved as if they're still with us is probably the sign of a great woman in many ways. And we've also spoken about those many ways where we were touched. But Mother, you know, I remember having an argument with Mother, actually. And she used to like those sort of things. And we were arguing about the need for another book. And she said, oh, well, Malcolm Muggeridge's book is just fine. And I said, yes, but we didn't have AIDS then. We didn't have all the other ministries that you have started, because Mother started the first home in New York on Christopher Street for AIDS. And I visited many of the home of people living with AIDS. And she was the first to do that. She was sort of almost like a Dorothy Day. You know, she just went straight into the problem, started on the street. And then she opened many, since Simple Path, she's opened houses for people living with AIDS. So these are the things that we don't always know. But Mother was an opportunist in many ways because she was a CEO. She saw the opportunity to minister to the need. She also saw the opportunity when she was with presidents that she used to get, some people would criticize her for asking for money from people who were authoritative or had influence, but she was an opportunist. She'd see these things as a way of being able to give to the poor in need. She didn't do it for any other reason. And she was successful, like you said, Stephanie, in your book. You know, Mother Teresa did it. So she does it, and she did it. And I still speak about her in the present tense.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Jessica Brown. She says, humility is manner of being, and love was foundation of being. What was silence for being?
Wisdom of being. Silence was wisdom of being, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Marty Chapman is reminding us that Shane Claiborne had a very similar experience to yours, Stephanie and Miriam, whereby he showed up without a reservation. So we should send him a copy of the book and find out his story too. You have that in common.
Sounds good.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Marty. Well, thank you again to the three of you for being with us and sharing your stories. So wonderful. We've been live streaming our launch today on Facebook, and a recording of this time together will be available later on YouTube. So we'll certainly share it, and we hope all of you will too. So many around the world have a special love for Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and it's just such an honor to be able to share in that with all of you.
Mm-hmm.
To honor her and to celebrate the birth of this new book, all of our titles on Mother are available from paracletepress.com for 10% off. So I've shared a link in the chat bar if you use the coupon code Teresa at checkout. We'd ask that you consider gifting this beautiful book, She Made Me Laugh, and any of our books on Mother and on the saints to your friends and family, your book clubs, perhaps any small groups that you might belong to at church or at school. The stories of these wonderful people that are so accessible are just so encouraging to us, especially in times like we're in right now. And your generosity will obviously help support our authors like Stephanie and Paraclete Press in our ongoing work and providing events like these. And of course, we always encourage you to support your local booksellers too. Stephanie's book and all of our books are widely available. And if your local bookstore doesn't happen to carry it, just ask them to get in touch with Paraclete and we'll be happy to supply them. So again, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this hour together as much as we did. Such a blessing. Thank you, Stephanie and Miriam, who are in Canada, and Lucinda, who's in Tuscany. And here we are on Cape Cod. It still amazes me that we can hold these international gatherings with a few clicks on the computer. It's so wonderful. Yeah. So thank you. And we're praying.
And Rachel, can I also appreciate you and Katie doing behind the scenes to get everything to go so smoothly. Takes all of us.
We're honored and privileged to do it. So thank you. And our prayers are with all of you around the world for health and safety. And we'll hope you'll be able to join us for more of these times together with our authors. Our calendar of online events is available on our website, paracletepress.com. So thank you again to all of you. Keep safe. God bless you. And we hope to be together again sometime soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Stephanie.